Why on earth did I move to South Italy? If there is one question that I'm asked a lot, it is this. And I'm asked this a lot here on this YouTube channel, and also sometimes from people that live here. People are just like really curious as to why I would choose this part of Italy to move to. And so in today's video, I thought that I would share with you my honest opinion as to why I personally chose the south of Italy over the north, and kind of open your eyes a little bit as to what life is really like here in the south of Italy if you didn't know already. Now, I feel like I have to say this at the very beginning of this video. Italy is extremely multifaceted, extremely divided, and extremely complicated. And so for this reason, it's very difficult for me to give you a blanket answer for all of South Italy, because even from one part of South Italy to another, life can be completely different. For example, now I live in Sicily, Palermo to be precise, and Palermo is completely different to where I used to live before, which was Salerno. So you see, it's not always easy to talk about Italy in these very general terms. But for the purpose of today's video, I will do this, but just know that within those different parts of Italy, life can be completely different, which is why I always stress on this channel that you need to do your research if you plan to move here to really understand what your life is going to be like in the particular part of Italy you're interested in. I have to be honest, I was drawn to the south of Italy primarily because it was the very first part of Italy that I visited. So back in 2017, I took my very first holiday here to Italy, and I went to a little town near Sorrento along the Amalfi coast. And it was my first taste of what life in South Italy could be like. It was beautiful. It was August. I didn't realise back then that August is a bit of a dead month for, many businesses. But in that particular part of Italy, it's a tourist bubble. So places were open and things were trading as usual. But it was a magical moment, and it was a moment where I just felt this inner connection. And it's really difficult for me sometimes to explain this properly on this channel because it sounds so woo-woo, but it was just a feeling within myself that I could actually feel comfortable living in this particular part of Italy. And it was where the desire and the dream to move to Italy first began. Now, I did follow that visit up with a second trip, this time to Naples, so always kind of within the same part of Italy. And again, I still felt that same connection. Despite Naples being very raw and rugged, I still felt this strong connection to this particular part of Italy. So when I decided in 2018 to really get serious about my move and I arranged the language exchange, I chose a city that was very close to where I'd gone on holiday, Salerno, to do that language exchange within. And that essentially is how I really secured my bond for South Italy. Now, I come from London in the UK, so it's kind of naturally considered that I would choose the north of Italy to move to, because there are a few more similarities I would suggest to the UK compared to the south, namely the weather. There is definitely a distinct change of season in the north of Italy. Now, I visited the north of Italy a couple of years ago around this time of year, and I visited a place near Bologna, and I have to be honest with you, it felt like I was in the UK. The leaves had changed colour, it was foggy and misty in the morning, the sky was grey. It definitely resembled to me the weather that you would find in the UK. And I know that it can be very cold in the winter in the northern parts of Italy. Some places even have snow, and also it can rain a lot. I mean, the north of Italy has been ravaged by floods and heavy rain for really the last couple of years. So essentially, I know that the weather is very similar to the UK. And for me personally, I didn't want that. This might not be something that bothers you, but I come from a country where 90% of the year it is grey sky and clouds. And it does become a bit depressing after a while, which is why I think there's always this mass exodus at summer to tropical destinations from the UK, because people have just had enough. So for me, the sunshine, the warm temperatures, and having pretty good climate was something that was important to me. So for me, the south ticked that particular aspect. But also because I know from what I saw when I went to the north of Italy, and also from people who I know that live in and around North Italy, that it's more expensive to live in that particular part of this country. Now, let's take Milan, for example, because I know people that live in and around Milan. it's extremely expensive to find housing, especially in the centre. And actually, Milan is not really a very safe city. There are certain parts of Milan that are like no-go zones at certain times of the evening. And even at certain points in the evening, the streets will become like deserts because people go home and it's not really considered safe to be out at that time. So it is a very different way of life in Milan. But Milan is like the business hub of Italy. It's where a lot of the big companies are based. It's where a lot of investment is made. And so it naturally draws people to that particular part of Italy for career advancement and job opportunities. So it's a bit of a balance because a lot of people who do work in Milan cannot afford to live in the centre itself, even though that would be the most convenient thing. They actually have to live in one of the suburbs and commute into Milan in order to be able to find somewhere affordable to live. So it is a problem, I would say, and it's a similar problem to what people face in the UK. If you want to live in the centre of London, you have to be a millionaire. It's ridiculous, the cost of housing for both rentals and properties to buy. But again, if you want to kind of work in London, you cannot really live there. You have to live in the suburbs and commute in, but then you have the cost of the train fares and things like this to factor in. So again, it's a similar problem. And I didn't really want to go through that because, okay, I live in the south of Italy where the kind of job prospects are less and the pay is less as a result, but so is my cost of living. Like the apartment I live in now, I could absolutely never find in the UK for what I pay for this place. And it is incredible. Like, you know, in the UK, what I pay for this like 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment would probably be the cost of like one teeny tiny studio flat if I was lucky. So, you know, for me, the cost of living is so important. And it's not to say that things haven't gone up here, because they have. As I've mentioned in other videos, the price of food and coffee and, you know, eating out and things like this has slowly been increasing over the years that I've lived here, just because, you know, everything in the world has gone up in price. And I feel like people here in the south feel it more because their wages are lower. So it's not like there is a kind of, you know, trade-off between their salary and the cost of living increasing. Everybody here is having to still survive, but their money is still the same. So I do kind of recognise that in some respects, life here can be a bit more expensive than it was in the past. But if you're going to do a direct comparison to somewhere like Milan, of course, it is far, far cheaper. Now, another reason why I didn't really choose the north of Italy is because I felt a connection to the people here in the south of Italy. There is a warmth here in South Italy that people have told me you don't really feel in the north of Italy very often. There are exceptions. This is a bit of an age-old stereotype, but I have to admit, the time that I spent in the north of Italy, which was a few days, I didn't feel that same kind of warmth from the people as I did the very first time that I came here in South Italy and spent a few days here. So there is a difference, I think. And I think, you know, when you want to live in somewhere where people actually say good morning to you and you feel like there is a sense of community, it does make a big, big difference. Like when I lived in the UK, I didn't used to say hello to my neighbours. I didn't often know my neighbours' names. Not for every place that I lived. Of course, you know, in some places that I moved to, I got to know my neighbours pretty well. But on a whole, it's not normal that we would walk around the streets of the UK and say hello to people we don't know. But here in the south of Italy, it is. And that's why I say, you know, you've got to think about these aspects when you want to move to Italy, because maybe you want to move somewhere where there is a sense of community. But I think that you can find that here in South Italy, depending on where you choose to go within the south of Italy, of course. But there is a sense of community here. And I think that for me means a lot. And I think as well, like, even though South Italy is neglected, because it is, as I said before, the investment, the big business, the opportunities tend to gravitate to the north of Italy. I really like how South Italy doesn't try to be something it isn't. There is no pretense here. It is what it is, like it or lump it. And I really like that, because I think so many of us want to live the perfect curated life. We want to live in the places where, life just looks like it's stepped straight out of an Instagram post. But the reality is you're not necessarily going to be happy in those places because, they're not necessarily representative of real life. Real life is when you are living in a place with hardship and struggles, but also beauty and kind of, really special moments and a sense of community. That is real life. And that is what you find here in South Italy. Here in Palermo, it's kind of this melting pot of abundance, mainly from the past. You can see beautiful villas here and palaces that, my goodness, blow you away with like the lavish interiors and the decorations and the money that would have gone into that back in the day. And then you also have like the extreme poverty here. There are certain neighborhoods like the Zen neighborhood in Palermo where there is extreme poverty. And as a result, a lot of crime, drug problems and violence tied into that. And so you have these extremes. It's like this huge melting pot of abundance, poverty, crime, beauty. It's a bit of everything, but I really like the reality of life here because I really don't like superficiality. I don't like places that are surface level, look amazing, but when you scratch a bit deeper, they're not. And so that's why I think I was really drawn to South Italy. North Italy is beautiful. In fact, it's a part of Italy that I really want to explore more, especially next year. It's kind of on my bucket list of things to do. And I want to spend more time there, but to live there, I just didn't feel that connection. It's beautiful for people in many different ways, but I think that you have to also understand that, there's a trade-off as well. For example, South Italy is renowned for the quality of the sea, for the beaches, and for this, you don't necessarily get that in the north of Italy. You can find some beach locations, but the sea quality is definitely not the same as it is here in the south. You will also find that there is a bit of prejudice as well towards South Italy in the sense that people in the north look down on the south of Italy as being kind of something under their shoe, yet it is the place where they have their holiday homes and they migrate to every single summer to enjoy the lovely weather here and the beautiful beaches and food. So you have this kind of weird paradox that exists here. South Italy is looked down upon by so many people, but I hate that. You know why? Because there is not one perfect place in Italy. Italy is an extremely problematic country, and I think if you're busy looking down on the south, you are not busy looking around where you live, because I promise you it's not perfect. And it's this, I feel like if you want to work here, especially with what I do, I'm an English teacher here, there is more possibility, I would suggest, in the south of Italy, because this is not based on any kind of statistics. It's just a personal feeling. And from what I hear from people that I know who live here, a lot of people will gravitate to the north of Italy for work. And so there are more perhaps English speakers in the north of Italy and people who potentially could do those kinds of jobs. Whereas here in the south of Italy, some people don't want to live here for all of the horror stories that they've heard and for the lack of opportunity, etc., etc. And so there is a gap for English teachers here in South Italy, especially. And, there are lots of places that need teachers. And so as a result, that could be an opening for you if this is a career path that you want to follow. But it's this. I wanted to record this because I get asked this question so many times that now I can just point people to this video and say, watch this video, and then you'll understand why I chose the south. I came to Italy for my own personal growth and development. I wanted to rediscover my joy, and ultimately living in South Italy has uncovered so many lessons that I have learnt about myself and about life. And I honestly don't think I would have learnt that in the north of Italy, because for me, life would have resembled perhaps a bit too much like my life in the UK. Not in every respect, but in quite a few. And so I don't think I would have had the personal growth that I have had living here in the south. So I really think the decision that you make about where to live in Italy has to be a very personal one for you. You have to be honest about why you want to move here, the things that are important to you, and what it is you hope to gain out of your experience. And so I hope me being really honest with you about my experiences here living in South Italy on this channel can help you to understand if this is really a region of Italy that you want to move to. It's not easy to live in the south. I understand that I sacrifice a lot of things by living here. The infrastructure is troubled. There's not a lot of investment made here. Sometimes the mindset of people here can be pretty closed. It's just generally not an easy part of Italy to live in. But boy, oh boy, does it teach you some of the best lessons that you could ever learn in life. I mean, who wants to have an easy life and not learn anything? I would prefer to have a few challenges and come out the other side a much better person, because I think that's what life is about. It's not about staying in some kind of like easy cruise control, fifth gear for the rest of your life. I feel like you have to go through different situations, because that is what makes you as a person. And so, you know, that is my take on why I chose to live in South Italy. It was that inner connection that I've never really been able to fully express properly in words. Just a feeling that this was where I was meant to be. And right up to now, 6 years later, that feeling has not let me down. I will see you in the next video.